All right, we're live. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Rocket MSP, the podcast where we ask tough questions of MSP vendors. And I am Steve Taylor, your host. Today, I am joined by Dan from DarkLight AI. And Dan, I'm really excited to have you on here, man. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure, Steve. It's been a long time coming for both of us. Thanks for your patience with me, and glad to be here.
Yeah, and we were supposed to do this last week, and I was having all kinds of weird audio issues. And then I had more audio issues today, but I fixed them because I've got a whole bunch of microphones laying around. Long story. So, we've got a lot that I want to go over today. So I'm going to just dive right in with questions. So
Great.
let me get those pulled up here. So why don't we start off with something simple? What is Cyio?
Well, Cyio is actually a spin. It's spelled CYIO. It's a spin from the Latin term SCIO, which means to know. And Cyio is a cybersecurity software solution that is focused on the cybersecurity hygiene and posture management. At the end of the day, the value we're providing is to quickly prioritize risk so that you can prioritize your resources.
All right. And what inspired you to create Cyio? Like, there's other platforms out there. Why do we need Cyio?
Well, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but I came from the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist finance space. So I sold that business in 2015 because there was a lot of positive movement after 9/11 to help the industry solve the problem. Now, that's not solved, but we as an industry did a lot after 9/11 to make big movement there. Mm-hmm. And the more I started to understand cybersecurity, the more I felt there were some overlaps and lessons learned from AML and terrorist finance stuff, namely talking about risks, speaking about threat intelligence sharing that could transfer into the cyberspace. And candidly, to me, there's no bigger issue from a standpoint of protecting our way of life as Americans and as the international community to feeling like there's integrity online. And so I wanted to participate in something that was going after that goal.
That's awesome. What's your unique selling proposition for this product?
We have a very unique way of speaking in terms of risk. For the product where it sits today, we're trying to help MSPs and small medium businesses stop playing vulnerability whack-a-mole, because there's so many vulnerabilities. There's hundreds of thousands. It's overwhelming. In fact, that's our mission, is to help overwhelmed defenders become empowered, help empower defenders so they're not overwhelmed victims. And one of the things that's also amazing in our industry is how much information and best practices there is to help the defender. But it's also overwhelming. So how do you operationalize these frameworks and standards? There's so many of them. And so this technology started in a Department of Energy national lab east of Seattle. If you can't tell here, I'm in Seattle. And I came across those scientists and really felt that the base technology, we won't go too deep into the weeds unless you want to, allows us to do something different. And one of the things that is different is we can take risk, which many people don't understand that is what that actually means, and turn it into how does it impact my business in terms that the decision makers of the business can understand. And in this specific example I'll share, in the NIST framework, there's something called the information system. Mm-hmm. And what's tough for relational databases that most of these scanners, prioritizations engines are built on, is it's very difficult to have two things that are named the same but mean different things. So the term information system in NIST is actually a collection of assets. So it's a printer. So let's say your payroll system, it's printer, it's an outside SaaS product, perhaps it's inside laptops, and that's an information system for payroll. But it's also at the same exact time considered one asset. And so our technology, we use a semantic knowledge graph. I won't throw that stuff out there too much, but that's enabling us to actually deal with that problem on actually operationalizing and automating this type of analysis to bring the good stuff that's out there into the hands of people that aren't Bank of America or JP Morgan.
So how do you differentiate Cyio from other AI-driven cybersecurity platforms on the market today?
We've really steered away from using the term AI because there is a lot of challenge with people believing it, et cetera. And if you want to get into the weeds of that, we are what's called a knowledge-driven AI. And all that really means, to keep it simple, I don't want to dumb down what we're doing because it's pretty darn cool what they built out of the lab and what our team has built in the last 4 years. But it allows us to take a human tradecraft and operationalize it into the software code. And so think of the if-then statement that is really hard at scale. And we have been able to take that with this technology and not have such a brittle environment. So that differentiator of allowing us to bring lots of separate information into one place and provide a knowledge-driven AI over the top of it is something that others are going to have challenge to do until they change their base tech stack.
Okay, so you mentioned that Cyio is designed to empower defenders. I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly, to overcome the complexity of the hundreds of thousands of active vulnerabilities that are out there, and avoid all the confusion and all the overwhelming feelings, right? So with that, I had a thought and I lost it. Can you walk us through a real world example of how Cyio has helped a company detect and respond to a cyber threat?
So we're right now, and as I've shared with you, Steve, we're a startup. So we have 12 employees. We're installed in 4 or 5 pilot users right now. And even in that real world, a great quote just happened this week, I think. We support 2, so we rely on other scanners. So what our objective is to be scanner agnostic, because there's a lot of great information available to you. And I'll sidetrack just for 1 minute. One of the quotes that drew me to this industry was from William Crowell, who's a deputy director of the NSA, was a long time ago. He used the quote in cybersecurity, it's 1,000 points of light without illumination. Because we have so many places to access data, but how do we actually fuse that in to highlight what's actually going on? And so even those scanners, as good as they are doing things, some are better than others, obviously, but our client ingested and was using one of the big 3 scanners and actually liked it. And we said, let's just test it. Let's drag and drop your scan into our environment right live and see what happens. And they couldn't believe, when you start adding outside threat intelligence and you start adding the different scoring capabilities that are out there, temporal CVSS versus just CVSS, Kev and other things that are out there, how quickly, without any context from us or Cyio about their environment, they could quickly see where their highest risks were. And they were different than what came out of the box of the vulnerability scanner. So that kind of really helped solidify them installing Cyio and helping us continue to mature the product.
Very cool. All right. I don't like that question. I'm going to a different question. So I wrote down a lot of questions.
Your show, Steve.
I wrote a lot of questions, and I feel like I got to bounce all over the place with them. All right. So do you have a dedicated security team in place?
Yes. So Aaron Shaha is our CISO, whichever you prefer. He and I worked together at another MSSP called Route 9B. And Route 9B started a bunch of, and everyone likes to say they have NSA folks. These guys are awesome. 20 or so left at the same time after Snowden and created an MSSP that was very, very advanced. And they were from the Tailored Access Operation Group, and Aaron was a big part of that. That entity that I was with is now owned by Deloitte. And Aaron came to us where he was their head of North American head of incident response and of Hunt. And so he is our CISO. So while we are a startup and we are not perfect by any stretch, he is making sure, and he's charged with making sure that we're eating our own dog food. We're doing as much as possible in doing our own vulnerability scans, et cetera, et cetera. So we absolutely have a dedicated security person, even with only 12 people. Now he does help me on sales pitches, so he does
Sure.
do more than one thing.
You're a startup. Everyone's wearing multiple hats. I get that. All right, so let's talk about the platform and the underlying technology with it. So, how does it handle data encryption, both in transit and at rest?
Well, there's going to be you're going to talk some technical levels that I'm not in a position to get into. I'd be happy to have Aaron join at some point. What I can share is that our platform is built for MSPs or very large organizations that have multiple segmented, including classified space. We aren't doing those yet. And so this is why it's very important for us to protect that. Right now, we're only delivery through AWS, although we are cloud agnostic. But we have a multi-tenant environment. So if you're an MSP and you have client A through D, each one of those clients' data will not and can't spill over to the other. And so that's, for now, the best I can answer your question, Steve.
Fair. Do you know if your platform is or will be zero knowledge?
When you said zero knowledge, I actually saw that question. Are you referring to zero trust or zero knowledge? And I might not know zero knowledge.
So let's talk about zero trust to start.
So zero trust, we're not part of bringing that to market. And again, that's another one that has a lot of question in the market. First of all, is it actually achievable? And I think the people that I sort of talk to say we need to move towards that and have that as an objective, but getting there is virtually impossible. So how we operate, we're actually trying to bring you the client understanding of what's going on in your environment. So by understanding what's going on in your environment, we're not going to be necessarily testing, is this a zero trust connection or not? But those tools that are, in theory, as we mature the product, the outputs of those tools will come into our platform, and then we can provide you a picture in one spot rather than going to 70 plus tools in your environment.
Gotcha. So the basic idea behind zero knowledge.
Now, we believe in it for sure. So another quick plug, the guy who's building this and the team building it, Paul Patrick, he was head of cyber for Lockheed. We brought him over from FireEye, where he was the chief architect of their intelligence product. So in the classified space that he was, for a lot of years, this is a really big deal for us. But I can't say that we're zero trust right now, and it's not the specific problem we're trying to solve.
Got it. And then, so the idea behind zero knowledge security is that when two parties need to exchange data, they do so in a way that doesn't compromise the confidentiality, integrity, or authenticity of the data that's being exchanged. So basically, they're doing it in an approach where you don't necessarily have access privileges for being able to view or manipulate the sensitive data. I suspect that you are zero knowledge, since you are getting what a vulnerability scanner is outputting. So you're not like installing agents on the endpoints and servers where you have access to confidential files and databases.
And Steve, we have one of our core values is transparency. And there's a lot of what you said that I fully understand. And I know that one of Paul's key things is this idea, and these are my words, so don't blame him if these are wrong, the difference between push-pull. So we're really interested in having those tools pushed to us rather than us opening a gateway so that we don't become another attack surface.
That's fantastic.
So there's no question that, and that's actually just philosophically, it's going to be interesting because clients actually want that because it's just easier. So we're being very careful of that until we have the resources to make sure that we're not creating another attack surface that there's no 100% lockdown, but we're trying to avoid that until we're more mature. So we want to have push from the products as opposed to us go get it.
Awesome. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask Dan to do a demo of Cyio. I just want to give you guys that are watching live an opportunity to pop your questions into the YouTube comments. That way, I'm going to do my best to get to everyone's questions. So feel free to pop them in there. Does your company today have a comprehensive information security policy in place?
We do have an information security plan in place. Insurance requires that, although we would have done it anyway. It's pretty light, to be candid. I've run larger businesses, but for our size, we have nothing to be embarrassed by.
Fair.
And we take it very seriously. In fact, I just got an email yesterday about how I didn't update my Mac quick enough for Aaron's.
That's fun.
Aaron's happiness.
Tell him you're going to install Sonoma.
Sonoma. See, I'm learning all sorts of things. I don't know what. Oh, is that the next operating system or something?
That's the one that's out right now in beta. I'm sure
Okay.
Aaron would love that.
I'm not sure I'm allowed to do beta. They don't let me do much here at all, Steve, to be honest with you.
No, that was sarcasm. If you didn't catch that,
I could pick up.
Do you guys have a bug bounty program in place today?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't. And I will also admit, Aaron and I haven't even talked about that. That's something between Aaron and Paul, who have huge experience in cybersecurity, and we have another woman. Well, even Erica, who's our marketing officer, came over from Route 9B, and Beth, who's our director of operations, came over from FireEye. I will literally defer to their suggestions on that type of best practice when we're ready.
Okay. So what type of vulnerability scanner files can Cyio ingest?
So right now, we only support Rapid7 and Tenable, Nessus. And so we did that because we had 3 design partners. One was an MSP, one is a very large public traded utility, and one is one of the, I'll just say the big 3 defense contractors at the CISO level. And when we did the study of, this is actually a mistake I made, Steve, to be honest with you, I made, but my call, between those 3, 2 of them used Tenable, one of them used Rapid7. And when you look across the market of vulnerability scanners, if you throw Qualys in there, it's like 80+% of the market share. So given our limited resources, we wanted to focus on our design partners. But when we went out and started selling to the MSP space, and the ones focused on small, medium business, cyber CNS and rapid fire tools, only 2% of the 100+ people we've spoken to use the ones we integrate with. So we have a whole list of folks that are interested in using us once we get cyber CNS. So that is on a very short roadmap item for us.
Awesome. Does the platform map risk scoring to standards other than NIST?
Well, that's interesting. Yes. I want to be careful on this. And you did, I actually asked this question to Aaron and Paul. So we're really focused on the NIST 800-53 framework scheme. And that's because we do believe that if you're doing the NIST cybersecurity framework well, that's going to translate to ISO and all the different ones that exist out there, the majority of the ones that exist out there. What we're doing is we're not trying to create our own proprietary scoring. We're using the scoring that's available to us and using standards, and then combining those together in our, I guess you could say, proprietary way. It's differentiated because we're bringing so many other scores into it to determine what is your most risk, and what's your riskiest area of, or what should you focus on within your environment. And so when you think of risk, it's likelihood plus impact, and that equals risk. And so we are bringing different scoring that are based on standards in to make that determination.
All right. Your website says that your product continuously is prioritizing, but how is it doing that if we're uploading scans?
So if let's say you upload a scan and then come back and what we're doing behind the scenes is constantly bringing in latest CPE information, latest CVE information, latest CVSS information, latest NVD. National Vulnerability Database, as an example, is updated 4 times a day or every 4 hours, 4 times a day, every 4 hours, something like that. So we're continuously bringing that new information into the Cyio brain. And so every time you come back in and look and do your analysis on the same scan, it could be different. And so that's what's continuously happening. Now, what it's not doing is, and this is not yet, we're not a monitoring capability. So we're not going to, you be sitting there and all of a sudden you get an email from, Cyio that says, hey, something changed in the background. We will be going that far, but that's a little further down the roadmap, because we want to bring in endpoint, we want to bring in systems logs, we want to bring in lots of stuff. We're just not prepared to say that we're actively monitoring, but we're continuously updating what's going on in your environment based on threat intelligence and other information available to the public.
That makes sense. Thanks for explaining that. Let's do a demo. Let's see how this thing works.
Great. We're gonna keep it pretty tight, and then if you want to, I'm just going to highlight a few areas, and then if you want to dig into it, I'll just let you lead, because I've seen a few of your shows, Steve, and you're in charge. So I want to make sure I'm prepared for that.
Someone's got to be.
Someone's got to be. All right. So hopefully you're seeing the Cyio login screen now, Steve.
We are.
Great. So everyone has a dashboard. Our dashboard, has the ability to change these screens as you like. Quick layout on the left side menu. One of the things that we do, this is an asset inventory system. Just a key point here, we're not trying to be the best asset inventory system. We're not trying to be the best vulnerability system. And we're not even trying to be the best risk management system. But what we're doing is bringing those things into one place. And then as we mature, you'll see this threat assessment piece it's grayed out right now. It's really the next big thing on our roadmap to bring that in as well. So we can do threat assessment reports. And this is all to help our clients deal with CMMC, deal with cyber insurance stuff using this framework. We also operate using the FedRAMP template for our reports, which I'll share a couple examples of those. And what's nice about our reporting is everything is already output in something called OSCAL, which is for FedRAMP, and we think CMMC will be a requirement. It's just a machine readable report. We're already built for that, even with the small team that we have. So you log in, my name, in this case, would be demo user. This is the example. This is an example org. We have when I log in, these are the 3, let's say I'm an MSP and I'm the analyst or the person handling security. The clients that I have access to would be available to me here. So if you have a very large team and you don't want every one of your analysts having access to all your clients, that is where this would be. We call these organizations, but really for an MSP, they would be one of their clients, or it could be their internal system. Mm-hmm. So we've obviously preloaded data here. The way it works, so what we've preloaded is scans in 4 successive months. But in order to upload a scan, you literally would just hit upload. And right here, I've got a Nessus, and I've got, they're all Nessuses, but I would just literally drag and drop into the environment, type a title, and then once it's processed in the background, depending on the size of scan, it'll be anywhere from 1 minute. I think the longest we've seen is 10 before it, gets up to our AWS and comes back to you, and then you get an email when it's done. And then within this environment, this is where we start to see some differentiation compared to what we can do because of this knowledge graph I'm talking about. So what you're going to see from most scanners, the output is what's the vulnerability, and most of them, although they're getting a lot better, I have to give them credit, and there's some really good ones out there, but they're focused on the CVSS base score and don't even use the CVSS temporal score and don't really start taking into account, is it exploitable, how much, etc. The other thing that happens is when you look at prioritization, So we want to help folks identify and prioritize these risks. They're focused on a vulnerability and on the host. So the vulnerability that sits on the host. But the reality is the host, that may be my Mac, laptop, has a product on it, could be Linux, could be whatever. That product has a weakness, and weakness, as we know, has its own scoring system. And the vulnerability is actually taking advantage of the weakness. And so right away, we're bringing in 2 additional layers that we're incorporating into our analysis that others are literally just focused on CVSS and host. And this allows you to sort of click on, and we also, by the way, bring in misconfiguration issues. Now, we are limited to what the scanner will see and what we can bring in from publicly available best practices. But if it's there, we'll grab it. And so once you click on one of these, it goes into, so this one we just, in this scaling, we just focused on one weakness. So any host that has that weakness will pull up. And it tells you what the solution is. It gives you some more information if you want to actually look at what this means. This is not, this is just stuff that's available to the public. We're just bringing it into one place so you don't have to go out and look for it, et cetera. So this is the vulnerability assessment piece. What we also offer we're trying to have a sticky product for our MSPs. And so what you can do here is we have those 4 successive scans. So let's say we just landed a new client and we say, hey, we've been with you for 4 months. Let us show you what we've done. And each of these little graphs, and a lot of people do these too, so I'm not trying to make this as differentiator per se, but just showing what we can do, because one of the differentiators we do have is we deal with these challenges over time. Whereas most of the vulnerability scanners out there are focused on a snapshot, and it's very hard to bring those together. And a lot of times it's done on your own through an Excel spreadsheet. We're actually trying to get rid of the spreadsheet, which is hard, but that's our objective. So you can quickly show trends of what you as an MSP, what value you're bringing. We certainly understand that vulnerabilities, once you're under control, go up and down, but on the front end of building loyalty with your client, we think this is a very powerful reporting capability. Now, what we also can do here is generate a report. That could take a minute or two, so I just brought a couple examples. So this is a vulnerability assessment report. We have one client, what they're doing as part of their sales process, they're going into a new company and saying, hey, let us do a vulnerability scan, and we'll provide you a report free of charge, vulnerability assessment, because for us, you drag, drop that scan in, and literally in 2 to 10 minutes, you have this report. And this report allows you to jump around to different areas in the environment, and this is all based on this standards. Not coming through great here, but you can see, and this is delivered in something called Markdown. So the client, this is white labeled. We don't need our logo on it. They can put their logo. They can do as much as they want within the report. Tracking so far?
Yeah.
And then we also have a security assessment report. Now, a vulnerability assessment report and a security assessment report are 2 terms of art in the NIST framework. And so we'll be just continuing to add reports as we mature. So the next one will be system security plan, threat assessment report. And because we are going to start targeting DoD suppliers that have CMMC, and some of the things you'll see in the product are probably going to be a little robust for some users, but that's part of what we're trying to do here, what we are doing. We want to keep it simple for those that don't have the same requirements as the DoD does. But also, if you have a DoD requirement, we can help you very easily facilitate the pretty onerous requirements that they have. And so our reporting is following those templates, using those standards, but giving the end client a lot of flexibility should they choose to do something different.
Okay.
So from that, I'll go to assets now. So from that drag and drop, and we are going to be programmatically submitting it, so you can set up to where whatever Tenable or Rapid7 pushes one of these, every day or every month or whatever. That's not quite ready yet, but that clearly is something we have to do and are doing. This was actually a request from our earlier pilot clients. We didn't have severity by asset. We want people focused in the risk assessment piece. However, what we're learning about the MSP environment is, hey, I want to get things done quickly. Tell me where my biggest issues are within assets. And so we quickly just were able to present this. So This literally, if you want to focus on assets, you should start with this SQL server. And so when you dig into this, we have a lot of flexibility here. So when you dig into that server, it's going to tell you what software is on it. It's going to tell you what risks are associated, and all of these are hyperlinked. So you can go, hey, I want to understand, what is this particular risk? So you can go now and change views just through that. And let me get back there. And this is fully editable. So if you want to add asset tags, ID, descriptions, et cetera, you have a lot of flexibility here to manage this. And this is also, we think, a nice opportunity for the MSPs to develop their revenue streams and create stickiness, because if they're charging a retainer, and what we have one MSP doing is they're literally bringing their clients, so they're having a Zoom call and having their clients view Cyio in real time. And they say, hey, let's start chipping away at your environment. We need to understand what's important, your e-commerce infrastructure. What does that look like? What is this? This computer looks very risky. Does it matter to the business? And you start to fill in data here. And of course, as we mature, we'll be bringing in spreadsheets to help fill in your assets that you've already done. We'll help, other ITAM, IT asset management systems will bring that in and automatically handle it. But right now, that's why we're focused on small, medium business, because if you have less than 100 assets, we think that's a real opportunity for the MSPs to start to differentiate and say, hey, we've spent a lot of time getting the knowledge of your environment into our platform, and we can do some pretty cool stuff with that.
So one thing, if we could stay on that page that we were just looking at,
yes,
that's okay. So one thing that I'll say is going to be a negative for MSPs is right now, if you were to click into one of those assets like the SQL server, like you said yourself, we can add things like the asset tag, asset ID, description, et cetera. But as MSPs, we've already got that information elsewhere, whether it's in IT Glue or whatever documentation platform we're using. We've got an RMM, we've got a PSA. I can tell you that a lot of MSPs are going to be really bummed if they have to come in here and manually type stuff in order to fill this out and have it look complete, because I'm sure our clients are going to see this incomplete thing and go, well, why isn't all this stuff filled out? And now we're going to have to explain to our clients, oh, well, we don't fill it out because it's a manual process and we don't need it because it's elsewhere.
Steve, we've absolutely heard that. And, before we started selling into the MSP, I did I thought a decent job of homework, but where I certainly missed it was the cyber CNS. And then basically we've come to realize that between, ConnectWise and Cyio, if you really want to penetrate the MSP in a big way, either deal with both or pick one and make sure that you're integrating to get all that stuff automatically in there. So there's no question. And what we're choosing to do, Steve, is we want to get our first 10 paying clients that serve a mix. So some serving DoD, some an MSSP versus MSP, some small MSP, some bigger MSP. And then that first 10 is going to literally vote on our roadmap. So do you want the integration with ServiceNow versus ConnectWise ticketing system? Do you want to add the cool threat intelligence piece that's amazing? And that one's probably, we're pretty close to having that done anyway, but that one we're finding may not be as interesting to MSPs versus what you just said. Hey, I've already got some of this data ingested, so we're just going to have to prioritize, as every startup has to do. But I appreciate the directness, and we've certainly heard that from some clients. Luckily, it hasn't stopped them from, we think, potentially realizing where Cyio's going for them, and they're still working with us. But there's no question that's something we have to work on.
Cool.
So just for time's sake, let me jump into, I mentioned this information system. And so this is, again, really where we start to differentiate. So instead of an MSP or an MSSP going to their client and saying, hey, we have a CVSS 9.8 that resides on a laptop, and CISA just sent out a notice saying that this is now very much exploitable. And there's no context to that. And so that's where information comes in, because do you care about that particular laptop? And how quickly, if you're an investigator from an IR perspective or even proactive, how quickly can you get to where and what, if we get new information from CISA or whatever, how can I quickly get to where I need to get and determine how bad this is? And so we have this concept of information systems. Sorry, it's not our concept, it's a NIST concept. And you can see here what you can do is say, well, let's just look at our payroll system. Our payroll system, then we allow you to talk about confidentiality, integrity, availability. It tells you what items are within that information system. It tells you what components are in that. You can upload if you want network architecture. There's a lot of power here. And then what's also very cool is you can visualize this. And this allows you to quickly call your client and say, hey, look, this risk could impact your payroll system. So if we don't take care of this now, you may not be able to pay your people. Or this risk could take down your e-commerce infrastructure, which is another information system. And this is, again, we think something that when we start to show this, this is where we're seeing a lot of, wow, I haven't seen that before. And literally, Steve, we're just getting started, because our visualizations, when you use a knowledge graph versus a relational database, is unbelievable what we can start to bring out visualization-wise to not only help create stickiness for your clients, but also become more effective in prioritizing resources, because you prioritize risk, and as everyone wants to do more for less.
And just because I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, an information system is a group of assets in NIST definitions. So it's possible that the payroll system and the marketing system could share some assets. Like they might be using the same servers or the same Wi-Fi APs or whatever we're putting in here, right?
Correct.
So
so think of me. We're a 12-person firm.
Yeah.
I was doing payroll myself until 6 months ago, and I still, approve it. So my laptop is both part of the payroll system, it's part of the HR platform, and it happens to have a fancy title associated. So yes, that is also part of the challenge. Now, the bigger companies, in a very small company, you may quickly be able to say, hey, I've got 10 assets. This one really matters. But even if you get into 50 plus assets, understanding, and the other piece we think is important here, is speaking in terms that the client can understand.
So
we just uncovered a risk that could take down your payroll system.
So so let's say we've got that SQL server is, I assume, in multiple systems, not just payroll. So how do I, as the MSP, take the information in here and quickly say, oh crap, this thing that's hitting the SQL server, how do I know that the SQL server is in multiple information systems? So that way I can go have that conversation with the client.
Well, so there's a couple ways to answer that question. So first of all, we had this good opportunity to show the risk assessment piece. So because what we want to talk about in terms of risk, and so these are your highest risks. And even though we also give the ability for you to quickly see which assets have the most risks associated, this is still where, as clients mature in their understanding of not only how to use Cyio, this is where we really want people to go. So if we let's just take one down here that has 6 occurrences, and we dig in here and we say, well, we now know that this risk exists, and this one, wasn't even severe, but it'll give you an example of what I'm talking about here. We can quickly look in the details, and we can see in this particular one, it's only impacting one target. So this particular risk is only impacting this particular host. So we can dig into that host, but now we can say, okay, we're on the host. This is all the stuff that's installed on the host, and these are the risks associated with it. So the ability to go from left hand to right hand and get into what do I need to fix is really what we're bringing to the top quickly. And let's just do another one if we want to just try to do this from an asset perspective. So this particular server has all of these risks associated. And if we went to just vulnerabilities, so if you want to go that way, because I think that's more germane to what you just described, and we said, hey, this vulnerability just came out as a very specific issue from CISA, you go here and you click on that, and these are the two hosts that have that vulnerability installed. Does that make sense? Is that answering your question?
Yeah, let me ask it a slightly different way then. So on that risk assessment tab in activities, is this and here's where I'm asking, how smart is your AI basically? Are you saying that the severity of this risk is based on the score in the CVE or whatever else, or are you also taking the fact that this is on a server that's in the payroll system and it's a more critical device into account when marking the severity of these risks?
The short answer is both. Most people
Okay.
have a depends, and the only reason I'm going to share depends is because obviously when you're first starting, like you're an MSP, you go to a new client, you drag and drop. We don't have any context, but that is the whole goal of, I think, any security practitioner would say, the more context we have and the more we can use and understand the business context, the better we can prioritize risk. Because if you don't understand impact, that's half the equation for determining risk. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand likelihood, and likelihood's going to be driven by lots of things, one of them is the vulnerability exploitable? Is it known to be exploitable? Is it actively exploitable? So there's your likelihood, and then you got to determine impact. So what we're doing is, with no context, we're seeing real difference in apples to apples comparisons between the base vulnerability scanners, which I'm not picking on them. We need them. And a lot of them do really great work, but we're doing more to bring more intelligence in to the base equation. Once you as the MSP start getting into that environment and sharing information with Cyio about that asset, then absolutely that information gets brought into our equation to prioritize risk.
So once we start filling out some of these asset tag information and we go into the information systems and start building the systems, then you have more context and you're able to give a much more thought out plan when it comes to the risk assessment.
Exactly. And I'll give you, and this was truly debated internally, because one of our strategies is we want to bring simple, frictionless solutions to complex problems. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, cyber is really complex. I mean, there's some fundamentals, but even incorporating those fundamentals is tough. So we wanted to, day one, provide additional value. If all you did was focus on, I'm going to focus on assets or risk, rather than just what's my quote, highest rated vulnerability, because that's unfortunately what still the majority is. We're moving in the right direction as an industry. There's, again, a lot of great tools out there that are moving in the right direction, and we're part of that. We're small, but we have big plans. So this risk assessment is a great example. A lot of people won't need the power of what we can do in here, because if you are a CMMC or you're a DoD supplier, they require you to have very substantial remediation plan reporting on all of your risks. And so we give you that ability to have tremendous flexibility, and these are all terms of art, on building out plans within Cyio. Now, what we've certainly heard from the MSPs is, I don't have time for that. So they may not use this part of the system until we're integrated with ticketing, and they may never. They're just like, look, I don't have a 1,000,000 asset environment. I've got clients that average, 200 to 1,000 or whatever it is. So I just need to get focused on what's most important. Let's start bringing up, creating information systems, and let's start slowly chipping it away so we don't overwhelm the MSP and we don't overwhelm the client. It's just over time we're dramatically improving our knowledge of the organization. And even if you haven't filled everything out, we're very confident in saying we will give you a prioritized list, apples to apples, as good or better than anybody else. Just based on the drag and drop, because we're constantly bringing in other information to determine likelihood. We can help determine likelihood. Impact really, and I don't want to get too far out on our roadmap, Steve, but this is one of the reasons I came here and wanted to be a part of this. One of the cool things about our knowledge-driven AI is we can deduce things. We can infer things. And so if you're bringing information in and we're fusing it and we're seeing, when we start bringing in, EDR or network traffic information, we can see, my goodness, there's a lot of data going between here. That must be important. So as we mature, we'll end up saying proactively, hey, you haven't had time to fill out this information system, but we really think you might want to take a look over here because there's a lot of stuff going on here. Nothing's flagged from an alert perspective, but is this a high priority to you? And that's, we have to go there if we're going to keep our edge or really develop the edge of differentiation. And that's why we spent some time building the base tech to make sure we can get to that level, that long-term vision.
I appreciate that. So today you have a pilot program that when we head over to your website, so I'll just start by saying, if you guys want to sign up for Cyio, you want to sign up for the pilot program, you can go to darklight.ai, and when you get there, it's just going to pop right up on the homepage to become part of the pilot program. Can you explain the pilot program to us?
So again, in the spirit of transparency, we're a startup. We just got another round of funding that closed about 2 weeks ago, but we really want to start moving from our beta users to some level of paid client. And what's important for us in our strategy has always been, we want to get those first 10 clients, as I talked about earlier. And then we're going to slow things down and make sure that our foundations that we've built are scalable, that we're actually making the product as usable as possible to those first 10 clients that are paid clients. And so what the pilot program is now is, hey, come get a demo, kick the tires for 2 weeks. And if you're actively using it and not quite sure, I'm going to be pretty easy to say, let's extend the pilot a bit. If you're actively using it, getting us good feedback and saying, hey, this just doesn't work for me, but I still want to be interested, we're going to work with you. And we're trying to find that first 10 clients. I think we're very close to signing our first 3 that'll be paying. And just so everyone knows, we're wide open to this. We have a minimum monthly subscription of $250. And you're basically signing up for 90 days. And so what we do, and that's for up to 300 assets within our system. And this was developed through speaking with other MSPs, because originally I had $1,000 minimum for a year, and the MSPs are like, hey man, that's not how it works for us. And so we came up with this $250 for up to 300 assets. And so that's a snapshot taken on, day one, you charge $250 at the end of 90 days. If you now have 600 assets, it's 83 cents a month per asset, and you've only signed up for the next 90 days. So no long-term contract, super simple. And the pilot is just, hey, does it bring value to you? Do you see the potential? If not, we totally get it. And hopefully we can call you when we're more mature. But we're really looking for partners in the space. And I think if people do homework on the people that we have here, I'm hoping and I'm confident they'll see, and hopefully this includes me. We're here for the industry. Yes, I've got investors to deal with, but we want to do something cool. And there's a lot of examples I see of good industry providers. And I like to be a friendly competitor. And I'll just bring up, I think Nucleus does a great job. I had the pleasure of meeting Steve. They're very good at vulnerability management. They're more mature than us. I think they want to do the right thing. And so we want to be friendly to our competition, because in the long term, there's a lot of business out there, but we got to work together to solve this problem. So we'd love to have you come check us out, kick the tires on and get a demo. While we have very few clients, Aaron is literally helping our clients go deep into how to use Nessus, how to use Rapid7. What does this stuff mean? And so you have access to someone that ran all of Hunt and incident response for Deloitte and spent a long time on the offensive side at the NSA as your, we don't call him a fractional CISO for you, but he's available to our early clients as we mature the product.
That's really awesome. Dan, thank you so much for coming on here today. I like your product. I can't wait to see you add more features and functionality and more scanner compatibility. I wish you all the best of luck and come back. Let's bring I think Aaron, right? Aaron's your CISO. Bring Aaron back sometime.
Yes, he's the one with the beard.
Yeah, he's the one. I love it. Bring him on sometime, and let's just talk about like some nitty gritty. What's it look like for an MSP that is maybe in their infancy of doing real risk assessment and analysis, and how do we step up our game? I think that would be a great conversation to have.
Steve, I would welcome that opportunity. And just one last thing, it's been really fun for us to get to know the MSP space, and we have a lot to learn. But it's so cool to see how friendly they are with each other. We had an MSP that was in Hawaii that liked what we were doing, but used Cyber CNS. And we got our very first referral because he told a buddy of his that's also an MSP that uses one of our products or one of the scanners. You can just see an environment where the MSP folks seem to want to help each other. And so I'm excited to get to know this industry more and more. And I appreciate being on here. We'd love to come back.
And that's why I love being in this industry, man. So yeah, thank you for coming on. Thank you for everyone who watched. And I will catch you all at the next episode.